And that was a story done earlier on by my colleague Francis Ontomwa on the state of Nairobi. And that's what we'd like to discuss this morning. And I'll start first of all by introducing the panel that we have here. And I'll start with my extreme left. We have Honorable Anthony Oluoch, who's an advocate of the High Court, also a member of Parliament for Mathare. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
We also have Kefa Ojijo, who's an advocate. And last but not least, Mushiri Midhamo, who is a political analyst. Thank you for joining us, gentlemen, this morning. Just to go through the state of Nairobi, a quick reminder, excuse me, that we do have the phone lines open and would like you to participate in case you have comments. Maybe you have something you'd like to throw to the panel, or just to get your comments on what you think needs to be done in Nairobi. And a quick reminder of the question: what is the one major thing that you would want fixed in Nairobi County? If you had to pick one thing, because we know there are many, and they probably are quite huge, most of them. But if you were to pick one thing, what's the one thing that bothers you as a Nairobian or as a Kenyan who has to come into Nairobi, and maybe one of the things that you find that bothers or needs to be fixed in Nairobi? Do let us know what your thoughts are. The hashtag is Morning Express KTN. If you'd like to tweet, it's at KTN News, or you can tweet me directly, excuse me, and that's at Michael G. Gitonga. Now, I'll start by looking at the manifesto that was given by Mike Sonko, and at that time with Polycarp Igathe. It's actually by Sonko and Igathe, and it's called Let's Fix Nairobi. And it's the title of it is The Problem of Nairobi County. And gentlemen, quite huge document here that was given to residents of Nairobi as they were campaigning. And maybe just to highlight some of the things that they have mentioned, one of the things they've said here: private greed, not public need, is what has driven the county government. Of course, referring to the previous government that would be under Evans Kidero. We also have point number 5, a never-ending chronicles of illegalities and impunity. Quite a number. I mean, it's a very detailed document with a number of things, with highlighting the problems of Nairobi, but also giving solutions, which so far Nairobi residents, from a survey we did, are not satisfied. Let me start with you, Honorable Oluoch, because you're in charge of, a constituency within Nairobi. And your thoughts at possibly what is it that bedevils this city? It seems that it's something that has been recurrent. I was reading an article yesterday, and apparently Nairobi is going to be celebrating 119 years next week. But it seems to have had the same problem recurring from those days till now.
Yes, thank you. I think the problem that Nairobi is facing, and the current governor, is a mixture of a number of things. I think the first would be that he's a victim of power plays. Those power plays are both within the Nairobi County itself. We have a lot of power brokers and cartels, so to speak, which, unless the governor managed to crack through, there is going to be a sense of paralysis, and we will simply get Nairobi grinding to a halt. I think the second level of power plays within Jubilee itself. I think Mike Sonko is the typical attack dog that became bigger than the master intended him to be, if you will. And this one person who brought himself into the table where he was not welcome to, and decided to take over the table from which the masters were partaking. You see, Sonko wasn't the choice of the Jubilee people. The choice of the Jubilee people was perhaps, so to speak, politically correct people, either Peter Kenneth, Dennis Waweru, whoever it was. And I think the deputy president picked the tabs and decided to own Mike Sonko. And I think then the third level of power play here is a succession problem of 2022. On the one hand, Sonko playing league with William Ruto, and the State House people whose succession question is very different and who are playing a different script. In between all this, I don't think that Mike Sonko, unless he calls stakeholders in Nairobi, including members of parliament, he will simply waste away and perhaps get himself impeached.
So do you think that the problems we're having in Nairobi right now are a direct result of politics playing in, and as a result, service delivery is completely in the back burner?
I think so, and it's unfortunate because I'm getting to the point where I think that Nairobi should be taken away from politics and treated like Washington, D.C., which is a special district. perhaps have a multi-agency, multi-stakeholder approach towards the running of Nairobi City that involves everybody and take it away from politics. So I think Nairobi City, and if we take away the personalities outside it, it's not about Buvi, it's not about who else. I think the bottom line is what is happening to the Nairobi people. And if the one thing you asked me that must be fixed very quickly is the terrible state of our sewer system and the terrible state of the roads and what happens when it rains. The system simply have broken down.
It gives
we need
way.
a total overhaul of that system.
All right, Mushiri Midhamo, your thoughts and opening comments on what bedevils Nairobi?
I wish to first mention that I attended the launch of that manifesto you are holding, and we had very high hopes at that time. I secondly wish to mention that contrary to what the Mheshimiwa has said, the Jubilee government is not fighting Sonko at all. The Jubilee government did not have a candidate of its own last year. Our candidate was the person who won the nomination. We supported him. Until the end, we voted for Sonko. Myself voted for Sonko. Again, my friend here agrees that we have issues in Nairobi. Nairobi has a problem. It is true that in this town, nothing is working. From the healthcare, we must agree that there is not a single county hospital today that has got even the basic medicine. Nothing is working. The garbage is all over, congestion, traffic. So I think we must agree that, yes, there is a problem. We must be honest with ourselves. We must tell Sonko that nobody is fighting you. It is the time to wake up and work.
As you mentioned that Jubilee did not have a candidate, according to what you're saying, they basically went with what the people had to say. Would you then, excuse me, on behalf of Jubilee say that Jubilee has failed Nairobi?
Jubilee has not failed Nairobi.
Despite the fact that you've just mentioned that nothing is working? Is that what Jubilee expected then?
Sonko is not Jubilee. Sonko is the governor of Nairobi, for everyone in Nairobi, including for those persons who did not vote.
Then would you say that Sonko has failed?
Sonko has failed.
Okay. Let me come to you, Kefa Ojijo, your thoughts on what the problems of Nairobi and where they've started.
Mike, thank you. Number one, Mike, political manifestos are just, political goodies and hardly...
But isn't that unfortunate? I mean, that we have a document that is so well written, so well produced, but is trashed after that?
Very unfortunate. But across the globe, hardly do politicians, keep their manifestos and promise to the citizens. However, let's deal with Nairobi. Mike, it is a reality that Sonko is a frustrated man. You can see from his face, you can read from his demeanor, you can read from the way he operates. Right now he's decided to operate from Machakos, where he comes from. If you have a governor that face a total, opposition and frustration from the national government, we have his securities withdrawn, you have, he doesn't have that goodwill from the top leadership. Nairobi is not a village town. This is the hub, this is the center, the heart of Kenya. If Nairobi is not working, Kenya will not work. You cannot, at this era, you cannot govern Nairobi if you do not have the goodwill from the topmost leadership. That is what Sonko is lacking. He means well for this county. You can see he's trying. He means well for this county. However, you realize that there is no coordination, there is no proper support from the top leadership. In fact, if anything to go by, Sonko will be enjoying the most, enormous support, better than Kidero, because remember Kidero was a governor when the leadership was, the Jubilee-dominated leadership from the top. So I've realized that there's only one thing we need to fix. One, there must be a goodwill and intended support from Jubilee leadership to support Sonko to succeed. Sonko himself needs to be supported. Nairobi has connection, and there's so many things that governor himself cannot do. You see? Governor himself cannot fix. Mike, for example, there are people who have encroached and put up buildings along the roads, along, the CBD area. Can you go as the governor and demolish them? You cannot.
But then we don't expect the governor to go and do that physically. But then is that speaking to the fact that he is incompetent? One of the reasons why many Nairobians probably voted for him is the team that they were working with Polycarp Igathe, who was supposed to take care of the administrative part of governance, whereas Sonko would take care of the politics. Would you then say that he is still competent to run Nairobi?
I don't think Sonko is incompetent. If there's anything to go by, most of these leaders that have even occupied, different sectors or different positions, they may not even have the skills that is required, but it's the support and the team you put together to help you pull through. You see, that is what Sonko needs. Sonko needs to have a proper team who are well skilled on the management and on how they can revive Nairobi. You see, for example, you need to come up with a clear structure and say, fine, number one, let us divide Nairobi into sectors. Let's say we have the Nairobi North, Nairobi Central, Nairobi West, Nairobi East. Then let's list down the things that affect us. Number one, let us start with the issue of bad roads, the issue of garbage.
We already have that in the document.
Yes, exactly. No, that was just a manifesto. Now let us do it practically. Sit down with these people in boardroom and let's say in Nairobi North, what is the most urgent thing we need to do? What is the timeline? Who is going to oversee that and report to me? That is what you need to do. And even as you do that, the issue of cartels is not news. Everybody knows. As you do that, for you to pull out from the cartel, you need the goodwill from the topmost. Because these cartels are also connected to that top leadership. You see, you will not just come and pull them out without the support from the topmost leadership.
All right.
That is what Sonko is lacking.
All right. Honorable Lodge, do you agree that Sonko is just lacking a support team and possibly he is competent but lacks the support that he requires?
I think the benefit that the former governor had, and I'm not saying that Sonko is incompetent, all he needs is to be able to harness the resources around him, and maybe that's why Igathe was coming in. Sonko came in on this populist platform, and what he was lacking in terms of managerial boardroom skills, Igathe was supposed to fill that in. The position you find Sonko now is that without a technical person and a support team, he seems to be cutting the image more and more of an isolated person. And in the process of that isolation, he has robbed himself or been robbed of the opportunity of being able to have people he can count on in the boardroom. And that's what I think the former governor did. He carried with him certain management skills that came in from his previous employments, and I think he was somehow able to cut through some of the bureaucracies. He happened to have been a governor at a time when we had a Jubilee-dominated leadership, but I think he was able to cut through some of that bureaucracy. I think Sonko would have to solve two things. One, to decide whether or not he needs to have a deputy that will have those technical skills, or simply call it quits. I think there was a time that you probably need to just throw the gauntlet and tell people that, Nairobi, I got this mandate, it was a popular mandate, I'm unable to execute it, let's go back to the ballot. Because Nairobi will simply grind to a halt at this level. If I was him, if you cannot do it, and there is too much frustration, just throw in the gauntlet. Yes.
And call it quits. Yes, sir.
See, when I say that Sonko has failed, I have not said that he is incompetent. Sonko is not incompetent. Sonko is competent. Sonko can work. But he has to keep away the side shows. Sonko has to wake up and start working. He must rather quit the blame games that he has engaged himself in. He must now prove to the people of Nairobi that he can work devoid of blame games. I am not agreeing with my colleague here that Sonko has lacked the support. Because when you first tell us that you are collecting an average of 1.7 billion shillings in a month, then we find that you are unable to collect the garbage. What support do you require from the national government? When you cannot seal the potholes, when already you have close to 2 billion shillings in a month.
So what do you term as the problem? Because you say he's competent, he has the support that he requires, yet he's not doing the job. Where is the problem?
He's not working. He has refused to work. Sonko has refused to work.
Wouldn't that then be incompetence?
That's not incompetence yet. That is failing. Yeah? Incompetence is when you you are not qualified for a certain job. Sonko is qualified, but he does not want to work. He wants to engage in side shows and blame games and all that, litany of blame games. I think what Sonko needs to do now is to set up a team that will help him work.
Okay. Kefa, let's talk about the way forward as we prepare to take a break in just a short while. You say he's incompetent.
No.
You didn't say he's incompetent.
No, he's very competent.
He's competent. Yes. So what is the problem?
Mike, as I said, and allow me to state this. Number one, let us see for what duration Sonko has been in office. His appeal was just determined the other day. In fact, ideally and legally, this person has been, in full operation less than 3 months. You see, less than 3 months, Mike. And look at one thing they have pulled through. One, they have increased the level of revenue collection within Nairobi. That one, we give him a plus. You see, we know we have money. The county now can collect more than what we used to collect when Kidero was the governor. That is a plus. Now, what we need to do is, now that we have the resources, where are we going to fix it? That is what you need now, to sit down with people and now, draw the lines on how it's going to be used. Remember, as a leader, sometimes, Mike, I think this is also something that may distract Sonko. As a leader, sometimes you do not have to, to respond to what everybody say. You do not have to respond to every comment or every pressure that comes through. And that is why you see Kibaki is, regarded as one of the most, performing president that we've ever had in this country, because he will sometimes just, ignore everybody and focus on what he wants to deliver. I think it is time Sonko that just decides to focus. Let him focus on things that matters for this country. Let him not play politics with so many people, because there are people who are not happy that is the governor, even from the Jubilee itself. We have seen from the leadership of Jubilee, including Murade himself, saying that Sonko is not supposed to be a governor. That was a mistake from the beginning, and they intend to fight him. We have seen. So sometimes you have to ignore and focus. Then Kenyans will support you. Kenyans will support you.
I want us to take a short break, and when we come back, let's talk solutions. And you've also mentioned Murade, who was on checkpoint last night, and he had some interesting things to say about Nairobi County and where we need to go from here. So we're going to be looking at that as we come back. So for now, we're going to take a short break. It's 25 minutes to 8, and we will take a look at the traffic as we take this break. But we'll be right back to talk solutions on Nairobi County.